This is a three-piece oak wardrobe made in about the 1920s in the arts and crafts style. Now, it's not an extremely valuable piece. These panels are only ply, but being made of oak, I think it's worth restoring. And I think it's got a nice symmetry about it with this pelmet and the bracketing and the brocade work. Now, the word restoration usually evokes scenes of madly stripping with a belt sander or getting the paint stripper out. But those methods are actually harder. So what I'm going to do in this case is I want to remove this black varnish, which I'll do with metho and steel wool, and reveal the beautiful timber that lies underneath. Then I'm going to finish it with a shellac and a wax. Good old metho. It even removes this old varnish. I'm using 000 steel wool again, and with the metho it cuts into the varnish and dissolves it. Now it's important that you wipe it off as you go, because if you don't, all you'll be doing is working the old varnish around and recoating the surface. So it's important to work in small areas at a time. I'm wiping the liquefied varnish off before it dries. These are just my pyjamas wrapped into a tight ball. With this brocade-like ornament, I just use a toothbrush and metho to get into all the crevices. We're getting there. Now it's important to change your metho regularly so that you can have a fresh batch that's got a bit of oomph about it, because it becomes saturated with the old varnish. And the same with your steel wool. Keep swapping it over regularly so that you've got a fresh piece to work with. When you get to this stage, it's just a matter of taking a clean cloth, soaking it in some metho, and giving the whole piece a good wipe over to remove any final residue. Yuck, bit of a messy, dirty job. But I think the effort was worth it, don't you? For the first time in its life, this thing has had its timber exposed, because when it was made, it was probably stained to look like walnut or mahogany. But I think it looks much better this way, don't you think? Let's have a comparison. Fantastic. I think the most exciting thing about this is we haven't actually put the finish on yet. So I'm going to put a shellac and wax on it to give it a lovely lustre, and you'll really see it jump to life. Do you know where shellac comes from? No. It's actually a secretion of the lac beetle. You think I'm joking, don't you? Well, it gets even more fantastic. It's harvested by intrepid rock climbers from cliff faces in southern Asia, where the female lac beetle, a shellac, lays this secretion, which is mixed with alcohol, and we mix it with metho because it's mostly alcohol, to form the polished shellac. It's amazing, isn't it? The shellac flakes are just covered with the metho and then stirred. It's ready to use in half an hour. Now I've got my least favourite pair of stockings here. These are last year's. And over a bowl, I'm going to strain the shellac and alcohol through the stockings. You can also use muslin. Strained of all the grit and particles, this is the solution that I'll apply with a long bristled brush.
Put a lid on it. Put a lid on it.
Oh yeah, Put a lid on it so it won't evaporate. The weather is crucial when you're applying shellac. Never apply shellac when it's cold or humid. Otherwise, the solution goes milky and you'll end up with an unsatisfactory finish. And you'll have to go through the whole removal procedure again. So a warm sunny day out of direct sunlight is ideal. I'm going to apply 3 coats of shellac to this oak wardrobe to give it a nice depth of finish. Now there are 2 ways of applying shellac. The first is with a very good quality paintbrush with the long bristles, and generally speaking, the longer the bristles the better. And the second is by a process called French polishing. But I'm not going to show you how to French polish for a couple of reasons. The process is very complicated and timely, and if anything goes wrong in between the many coats of shellac that have to be applied, then the whole process is ruined and you have to strip it off and start again. And secondly, I don't particularly like the high gloss piano finish that French polishing produces. Suffice it to say, if you want that sort of finish, then take it to a professional French polisher. Keeping your brush strokes in the same direction, apply the shellac just like a paint, spreading it thinly and avoid making ridges and bubbles. On vertical surfaces, don't let it run away from you in dribbles or rivulets. Always smooth them out. Move quickly, don't muck around and don't overwork it, because if you do, you'll leave a rough surface and also brush marks in the finish. The first coat raises the grain and really only fills the pores, so it will need a scuffing back. Now shellac dries very quickly, so I've only let this stand for about half an hour or so. And now I'm going to scuff it back with a 3/0 steel wool to remove any roughness from the surface. And that's all you really need to do. Once you've done that, you need to clean up the dust and the steel wool particles that you've made from scuffing. And you can do that with a tack cloth, which is quite a sticky cloth, and we'll remove that dust. Or you can use a vacuum cleaner with a brush on the end, it works just as well. Every coat after the first is more critical. Apply the second coat quickly like the first. Don't panic, but don't dawdle either, and don't let it run and don't over apply. Leave the second coat for about 5 hours or half a day, and then you can scuff it back again with the steel wool. There. Well, managed to get on top of this job. Now I've scuffed back the second coat with the 3/0 steel wool. Now all I need to do is clean up the dust, and I'm ready to apply the third and final coat. There. That's the third coat of shellac. Now I'm not going to scuff it back with steel wool because tomorrow I'll apply a coat of wax with steel wool and combine the process. Pretty tricky, eh?